Some sewing machines cost 100 euros. Some sewing machines cost 200 euros. And some sewing machines cost nearly 9,000 euros. If you ever wondered what's so special about advanced sewing machines, I'll try to answer in this video. This video is created in partnership with Brother, and they sent me their new Brother Stellaire XJ2 sewing and embroidery machine to test out. And while testing this machine, I observed a few things on what makes advanced sewing machines so special. Let's begin with number one, and the thing that surprised me the most about this machine is how much it makes sewing accessible. A little bit of a backstory. My grandmother always loved sewing. That was her main hobby. She absolutely loved sewing. But also she had leg problems, and she still has pretty serious leg issues. For her, with time, it became more and more difficult to use the foot controller on the sewing machine because it does require some strength, some mobility, and of course precision. And with time, unfortunately, she had to give up the hobby that she loved so much because it simply became too difficult for her to manage. Nowadays, modern sewing machines usually have a start-stop button that controls the sewing machine. The foot controller is included, and if you want, you can use foot controller, but primarily a machine like this one should be used with a start-stop button. Entire time that I was testing this machine, I was using the start-stop button, and I kept thinking how much my grandmother would have loved a machine like this and how it would have made her sewing so much more easier. Of course, the start-stop button is not the only accessibility feature. For example, there is an auto threading of the needle using a button. A lot of modern sewing machines, even in beginner range, have the auto threading, but it is manual, and let's admit, sometimes it can be also quite difficult to navigate. But when there is an auto threading of the needle using a button, it's always so quick and precise, and you don't have to look at the needle very accurately to thread it correctly. Also, if it's challenging to see where the needle is sewing, you can activate the laser, and the laser will show you where the seam will be sewing. These advanced features are absolutely amazing, but let's be honest, for many of us, they are nice to have, and for someone, advanced features like this may be the only way how they can enjoy the hobby that they love so much and how they can continue to sew. Second thing that you can expect from advanced sewing machine is the size. Now, usually when we're talking about technology, we assume that the smaller, the lighter is better. But when it comes to sewing machines, the opposite is true. The bigger, the heavier, the better. Of course, there are some exceptions to the rule. If you travel a lot, if you don't have a constant sewing space and you need to move your sewing machine every single time you use it, then of course having a lightweight small sewing machine will make it so much easier. But if you have a standard sewing place, the heavier and the bigger sewing machine, the more comfortable your sewing experience will be. So exactly how big this particular sewing machine is compared to standard sewing machine, let's first talk about the weight. Here's another sewing machine, the domestic sewing machine, Brother J17S. It is a beginner mechanical sewing machine, and it weighs about 5 kilos. Now, this Brother Stellaire XJ2 sewing machine weighs 15 kilos, so almost 3 times compared to the standard sewing machine. This weight adds a lot of stability, and when you're sewing, even if you're sewing at very high speed, even if you're doing embroidery at very high speed, the machine will remain calm, it will not vibrate, and it will make sewing or embroidering so much more comfortable. Of course, advanced sewing machines are not only heavy, but they are large much in their dimensions. Again, let's compare it to the Brother J17S and Brother Stellaire XJ2 sewing machines, and you can see what a huge size difference. You know that I use my industrial sewing machines, and even compared to industrial sewing machine, this machine is larger. So for comparison, this place until the needle to the edge right here is 2 centimeters larger than my industrial sewing machine, and the height right here is 1 centimeter higher than my industrial sewing machine. And if you're sewing something big, let's say you're sewing a coat, or maybe you're quilting a large blanket, having this huge space right here will make it so much easier to perform a task. And these dimensions, the weight and the measurements, definitely set the advanced sewing machines apart from standard sewing machine. A quick interruption to the video, but I wanted to mention that I recently started doing sewing questions and answers in my email newsletter. Every month I will answer your sewing questions. If you would like to join email community, I will link it in the description box down below, and the next sewing Q&A will be coming at the end of December. Third thing about advanced sewing machines is that you can customize anything, and by anything I mean literally you can customize anything. If you're using a mechanical sewing machine, you might be used to adjusting and customizing several features such as the stitch length, width, or tension, but that's pretty much it. Now on a sewing machine like this one, you can customize anything. You can adjust the presser foot height or the presser foot pressure. If you're sewing and you need to pivot, you can also adjust pivoting height or free motion foot height. Decide the needle position up or down, adjust light, screen display brightness. And once you select the stitch you want, you can continue customizing how the seam will start and finish. If you select a straight stitch, you can select whether the machine will do the back stitches, if it will automatically cut the thread, if it will show the laser pointer when you're sewing, and how it will finish the seam either with lowered or raised presser foot. And of course, you can control the width, length, shift, and tension. If you're quilting, you can even set your preferred stitch pattern and memorize it. And I got used to that customization so fast that once I finished this dress and I used another machine to sew a different project, I was missing out on those all customization features. Fourth thing about advanced sewing machine is actually they are quite easy to use. Now, when the sewing machine arrived, it's very big, it has this large screen, it has buttons, it has all of those functions, and I have to admit, at the beginning, I was a little bit intimidated. But turns out, using a sewing machine like this one is quite easy because there are a lot of navigation points to guide you in how to use the machine. Of course, the sewing machine has a manual, but also it comes with a QR code on the side, and if you scan the QR code with your phone, you instantly go to the instruction page, and you can very easily access the instructions that you need to use this machine. Not only that, but the machine itself does have tons of different manuals in itself on a screen that you can access anytime easily. And those instructions are quite detailed, and not only with pictures, but some of them also has videos showing you exactly how to set a certain task. This sewing machine is also an embroidery machine, and I was surprised how easy it is to switch from sewing to embroidery mode. Essentially, all you have to do is remove the free arm of the sewing machine and install the embroidery frame. Then you switch to embroidery foot and select embroidery on your sewing machine. and that's it. I was a little bit worried on how difficult it will be to switch from sewing machine mode to embroidery machine mode, but it literally was like a minute. Now that I mentioned embroidery function, let's move to point number 5, and it's versatility without sacrificing the quality. So this advanced sewing machine is not only sewing machine, but it's also quilting machine and embroidery machine. And the very first function that I used was actually not sewing, but embroidery. I wanted to embroider my son a sweatshirt with number 2 and a few of his favorite Disney characters. I used sweatshirt fabric. You know, sweatshirt fabric is not necessarily the easiest fabric to do embroidery on because it does have a bit of a stretch, even when the fabric is backed with tearaway stabilizer. And also I used a large hoop, and of course I chose the embroidery design with lots of details. Throughout embroidery I had to fill in the bobbin 3 times, and every time I had to take out the hoop to fill in the bobbin, I was a little bit worried on how well the machine will find the starting point where it left off. And honestly, I was surprised how well it stitched the entire design, even though the fabric was not ideal and I used a large hoop and very difficult design. And alternatively, when I was sewing on this machine, it didn't feel like I was sewing on a combination machine because the stitch quality and the stitch possibilities were very wide and good quality. I do not quilt, so I cannot talk about how good this machine is for quilting. I do, however, know that having this large space right here is very good for quilting, and also this particular sewing machine has a lot of different stitches that are specifically created for quilting, and as I mentioned already, it does have a pattern memory, so if you create a stitch design, you can memorize it and repeat it on the quilt. Number 6, what you can expect from advanced sewing machine is that it will come with lots of different goodies both outside and inside the sewing machine. Now, of course, this particular sewing machine comes with tons of different presser feet, it comes with different hoops, it even came with stabilizer, embroidery scissors, and lots of different other accessories. But not only that, but also it has a ton of features inside of this machine. When it comes to embroidery, for me personally, the most difficult task is finding designs that I can embroider. And with this particular machine, you get so many designs already included in your sewing machine. So inside the sewing machine you have several hundred different designs that you can embroider, and they navigate from very easy to more difficult designs. I especially like that it also comes with Disney embroidery designs, and there are about 100 different Disney designs. My son now loves cars, so this is what I embroidered for him first. And there are so many other characters included in this sewing machine that I can create lots of different embroidery designs for my son using his favorite Disney characters. Of course, those extra goodies are not a defining factor when you're choosing embroidery or sewing machine, but when it comes with lots of different accessories, when it comes with lots of different designs, that is a very nice feature. 7th and final thing that I want to talk about is the stitch quality. And of course, you are probably wondering, Julie, you talk a lot about stitch quality in your channel, why you are mentioning this as a final point. And honestly, for this price point, I would not expect anything less than perfection. So from what I've tested so far, from the sewing function, I made this dress. Don't let the fabric deceive you. It was very difficult to sew. It was very thick. Those metallic threads are really difficult to get through. but the sewing machine handled it with such a grace and with such an ease. And as for embroidery, I already mentioned it was very accurate when embroidering, even on sweatshirt fabric, very detailed design and on large hoop, and it created a very precise stitching and at very high speed. So when you're looking into advanced sewing machines, of course you can expect to get the superior stitch quality, whether it's sewing or embroidering. Here are all 7 points that I observed while using this advanced sewing and embroidery machine, Brother Stellaire 2. If you're interested in learning more about sewing machines, I have this video that you may be interested in watching next. Thank you for watching today, and I will see you next time. Bye!